Thank all of you for coming. 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, Kronos time. And we will begin. Our service on the touchstone theme of interdependence begins now. Let's take a moment to settle in, leave the outside world, and create a sacred space here together and hear Diedrich play Chopin's Etude, Opus 25, number 7. Thank you, Diedrich. And you guys ain't heard nothing yet. Okay, so good morning. Welcome to this Unitarian Universalist Coastside Community Sunday service. I'm Bill Hevlin, and along with Dave Rakowski and Tom Devine, we are your worship associates today. And a very warm welcome to those visiting us for the first time, and for our friends beaming in from El Granada joining us over Zoom. However you describe yourself, whatever your abilities, your sparks, your age, whomever you love, which paths you have traveled so far, you are most welcome here. For each of you present again a hopeful miracle in our midst, maybe for the second or the 700th time. Here we honor that personal flame which helps you to blossom spiritually, build community, and work for social justice and repair this world. And after all, what good is being part of a religious community if it does not offer hope when you are hurting? Today, we warmly welcome Steve Latner to the UUCC pulpit with a sermon entitled The Blessings of Second Chances. Steve recounts a near-death experience with meningitis and the blessings that were revealed to him as he recovered. He'll touch on some healing inspirations, including the allegory of Jonah and the whale, 12-step principles, and the first UU principle, respecting the inherent worth and dignity of all people.
Good morning. Morning. I woke up this morning and I looked outside and it was gray and bleak. And I read the news, and these are bleak times. So I look out and it reminds me of my third grade nun who began homeroom every morning by looking out and saying, "Good morning. Makes me happy to see your bright and shining faces." I can't attest to them all being bright and shining, but I do see and feel the glow of community. And the glow of the candle is battery powered. Today's chalice reading is entitled A Spark of Hope. The words are by Melanie Davis. They're in your order of service. And on the count of three, you can join in with me and read them. 1, 2, 3. If ever there were a time for a candle in the darkness, this would be it. Using a spark of hope, kindle the flame of love, ignite the light of peace, and feed the flames of justice.
It is now my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Steve Latner. Steve grew up in the East Bay and was raised Unitarian, along with his two brothers who currently live in the Bay Area. And one of them even showed up before. Gave him a second chance, I think. So Steve has a BA in History and Political Science from Chico State and has a teaching credential from San Francisco State. He's worked many different jobs, from taxi driver, retail manager, car salesman, and school teacher. After retirement from the school district, he joined a senior writing group and has written 3 murder mysteries that are available on Amazon. And Steve is a recent shared pulpit graduate and is very active in UUSM, in the UUSM congregation. And if that's not everything, recently he adopted 2 kittens from the SPCA. They're in charge, but they have agreed to let him live with them. Steve.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, they let me stay with them, and they said it was okay to come here after I feed them in the morning, and so I did that. I want to thank the UU Coastside for community for inviting me here today. I know that you all didn't individually invite me, but I'm here, and somebody invited me. And I wanted to thank Bill and Noreen for guiding me through the preparation for this service, because it's a little bit different than UUSM, and they did a great job. The name of my talk today is called The Blessings of Second Chances. And I hope you get something out of it. One of the most important things I learned through the shared pulpit was to number the pages, because I know I practiced this once and I got completely confused, so then I numbered the pages. Thank you, Bill, for that aspect. The blessings of second chances. My memory is of an ugly one-story building surrounded by dirt and patches of weed. This was the meeting place of the Unitarians of Walnut Creek back in the 1950s and 1960s. This was prior to the Unitarians becoming the Unitarian Universalists. It was also prior to the move to fancier digs on a hill in Walnut Creek. In 1955, my Jewish father and Protestant mother joined this small congregation. I was an adorable one-year-old baby. I really was. And my parents didn't consult me on this, joining this Unitarian group. There was no democratic process for me. I didn't get a vote. My mother had 2 more children within a couple of years of my birth. And by the mid-60s, my brothers and I were attending what was called Sunday school in this ugly pink building. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be outside. I wanted to be anywhere else. I wanted to be playing baseball, anything other than being in a stuffy room with droning adults. But I did enjoy some of the wild Bible tales. One of my favorites was Jonah and the whale. The story was from the Hebrew Testament of the Bible. Jonah was commanded by God to go to the city of Nineveh and tell these people to mend their wicked ways, or God would destroy the city and all its inhabitants. But the citizens of Nineveh were the sworn enemies of the Hebrews. Jonah was scared, and he hated these people. He didn't want to risk his life to help the people of Nineveh. So he hopped onto a boat, went on a cruise in the opposite direction, and this didn't fool God at all. God brought a great storm on the ocean. I imagine it to be like the opening scenes in that classic television show, Gilligan's Island. Every week I watched that storm on TV as the lyrics were sung. The weather started getting rough. The tiny ship was tossed. If not for the courage of the fearless crew, the minnow would be lost. Well, I wasn't an expert on the Bible, but I had the equivalent to a PhD in stupid television sitcoms of the 60s. Not to brag, but I also know all the words to the theme songs for the Beverly Hillbillies, Mr. Ed, and Green Acres, but I will use those in future sermons. Getting back to Jonah and the whale. Jonah was no Gilligan, but he knew when he was evil. He confessed to the crew his sin of not following God's command and told his shipmates to throw him overboard. The crew were decent men and at first refused. But the storm got worse. They tossed Jonah into the ocean. The water calmed and God sent a great fish that swallowed Jonah. Poor Jonah spent 3 days and nights inside the whale, repenting his sin of not following God's command and begging for forgiveness. In the story, the whale vomited Jonah onto dry land, which sounds really yucky, but Jonah got a second chance. He was still reluctant to fulfill God's command, but he did save Nineveh. Even at 10 years old, I didn't believe the literal truth of this tale. And I was not interested in metaphor, symbolism, or deeper meanings. I certainly wasn't left contemplating on the blessings of second chances. It was just a cool story told by an adult on a warm Sunday afternoon. After a few years, my brothers and I attended services less and less. We just weren't interested. Both our parents stayed active in the congregation, and they did not force us to attend. For myself, I concluded that all religion, especially if it included a deity, was silly, if not downright destructive. But 40 years later, I felt the need for a connection to a faith community with humanistic values. I joined the Unitarian Universalists of San Mateo. It was familiar and welcoming territory. As happens with new people in any organization, I was volunteered into service. I became a religious education instructor. Thinking back to my less than enthusiastic participation in the Unitarian Sunday School as a child, the irony was not lost on me. The first lesson on the curriculum at UUSM was the story of Jonah and the whale. I read and reread the story. I wasn't a diligent or conscientious teacher, just a new congregant terrified of making a fool of myself with the current crop of 10-year-olds. My teaching partner and I did a fair job of making the story as interesting as we could. I don't remember the points we made, and I forgot about any Bible stories after my stint as RE instructor ended. It did come back to me, though, about a year later, when I wrote a homily for a church service. The theme was gratitude for life. I wrote about my recent time in the belly of the whale, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. On August 3rd, 2014, I drove up to Sacramento from San Mateo to attend the California School Employee Annual Conference. I felt important, and my ego was puffed up because I was to receive a minor award. The first night in Sacramento, I felt a slight chill. When I went to bed, I pulled the covers close to me. The next morning, the first day of the conference, I awoke with flu-like symptoms. It was nothing, I told myself. It would pass. The next 2 days, I felt crummy, but attended all the presentations, took notes, and posed for pictures. On the third day, I wasn't any better. My symptoms had gotten worse. That evening, it was a great effort to go down the 2 flights of stairs from my motel room. Moving as fast as I could, I went to the motel office and made it to the bathroom just as I lost control of my bowels. After cleaning myself, I saw my reflection in the mirror. It was a pale, sweaty face that looked back at me. Splashing cool water on my face would fix me right up. As I left the bathroom, the motel clerk looked at me in horror. "Are you all right, sir?" "I feel a little sick." "Would you like me to call you an ambulance?" "No." The idea seemed ridiculous to me. It was comical. I didn't need an ambulance. That night was dreamlike and horrible. Unable to sleep, I trekked unsteadily from bed to bathroom several times. The pain in my neck had gotten worse. Watching the sun come up, I decided to check my wallet to see if I had enough cash for that day of the conference. Yes, I was going to go to that conference. There was $12 in my wallet. I'd have to go to the ATM. The wallet slipped from my hand and somersaulted in slow motion to the beige carpet of the Quality Inn Motel. The contents of the wallet came out and scattered at my feet. There was no energy left to pick anything up. Then I died. Well, spoiler alert, I wasn't actually dead. Probably figured that one out already. The bacterial meningitis that had been percolating in my brain caused a brain seizure. Luckily for me, the housekeeper came in to change the sheets. This was several hours after I had passed out. My work partner at the conference knew I wasn't feeling well and assumed I'd decided to take the day off. If the housekeeper had taken the day off, it's unlikely I would have survived. I was in a coma in intensive care at Kaiser Hospital for 4 days. I was in the belly of the whale one day longer than my friend Jonah. The MRI of my brain showed a white crown of infection. After awakening to noise, light, and confusion, and trying to pull tubes out of my body, I heard something about being in a hospital. Next day, I saw my brothers looking down at me. A doctor was telling them, "This may be as good as it gets." I wanted to yell at him, tell him what a lousy SOB he was, but I couldn't form the words. Over the following week, I had 2 more brain seizures that threatened to send me into the angry ocean, but I survived. Over the next 2 months, 3 different hospitals, I learned to walk and talk. The doctors said it was a full recovery. The neurologist called it a miracle. Like Jonah, I had a second chance. With my second chance came blessings. I had daily visits from family and friends. These visits included members of the UUCC Pastoral Care Committee. 2 years later, I became the chairman of that committee. That was a total blessing and gave me the opportunity to give back a little to what had been given to me. How often in life does something happen that we think is the worst possible occurrence, but we survive and find blessings we didn't recognize before? We all spend time in the belly of the whale, whether it's depression, a broken relationship, illness, or the death of a loved one. If we get past that fear or heartbreak, we can see the blessings that we have. The lessons for children of Jonah and the whale don't have to be as dramatic as brain seizures or near-death experiences. Just doing the next right thing, even if it's scary or difficult. Honoring commitments. Helping others. These are good spiritual lessons at any age. The story of Jonah and the whale ends rather abruptly in the Bible. Jonah is not happy with God for saving the people of Nineveh, thinking him too merciful. Jonah camps at the edge of town and pouts at God's compassion in saving the people of Nineveh, the sworn enemies of the Hebrews. God grows a vine to cover Jonah's head and spare him from the heat and wind. After a day, God sends a worm to eat the vine, and Jonah is again exposed to the harsh elements. This makes Jonah even angrier. God gently chastises Jonah for being more concerned with the vine and worm than the 120,000 souls he saved in Nineveh. Perhaps the lesson of the vine and the worm can be best summed up by one of the most recited prayers in human history, the Serenity Prayer, most often associated with Alcoholics Anonymous and other 12-step programs. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. It will be a challenge to find any group of people who know the blessings of second chances more than the alcoholics and addicts who have worked a successful program and stayed sober. In the book Alcoholics Anonymous, the phrase for what an alcoholic is going through emotionally at the depth of their addiction is pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I'm going to repeat that. Pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. That sounds like being in the belly of the whale to me. The program of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous includes 12 steps. It's the same 12 steps for dozens of addictive issues, I won't go through every step, but it's important to this piece to mention the 12th step. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. It doesn't say only if we like the person, or only if they are the same religion, or skin color, or the same sexuality, or the same social class, same background, same nationality. It doesn't say any of that. It says to help them. The last line of this step is perhaps the most important, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. To me, this means when we can, we help anyone who needs help, not just the alcoholic or addict. The AA 12-step reminds me of Unitarian Universalist first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Perhaps Jonah, without knowing it, was working both the 12th step and the first principle when he went reluctantly to Nineveh. If he was, then this time in the belly of the whale was the best thing that ever happened to him. A second chance for any of us is a gift, whether it comes from God, the universe, or the cleaning lady. If you survive your time in the belly of the whale, I urge you to make the trip to Nineveh. Thank you. And we are going to go into a time of meditation. And we can think about these principles. And you're going to ring the gong. And then in 90 seconds you'll ring it again, and we can go into discussion, right?
These are used. We do 60 seconds.
60 seconds? All right, well, we think fast. All right.
Now let's take a moment to listen to Diedrich play a beautiful piano arrangement by composer Patrick Peachman called Journey of Life.
And to all of you for attending the service today, I thank you. And to those of you that participated in sermon sharing, thank you also. And thank you also, most especially, Steve, for reminding us of second chances and of blessings and of their miraculous intersectionality, blessings and second chances, for reminding us that when we receive second chances, we recognize in them our own ability to express gratitude. Gratitude softens our hearts. Like in Steve's case, some second chances seem to come from modern medicine or from luck, kismet, the divine, or the kindness of a stranger just doing her job with extra care. And some second chances we create as a community. Sometimes even it is our own ability to forgive that creates second chances. As if from ourselves, from the better parts of ourselves. Just as gratitude softens hearts, forgiveness also softens our hearts, creates gratitude, pours more love into the world. I used to think gratitude and generosity were quite different things. Now I think different. Gratitude speaks and generosity listens. They sit together on the bus, sharing a smile, twinsies. So now I turn to you, my fellow co-travelers. Maybe you can spare us a moment, spare us $1, spare us a few moments, a few dollars. Share us a softer heart. Gratitude outpouring into generosity. Engendering gratitude, gratitude speaks, generosity listens. And as you lovingly uncap your pens and open your checkbooks, let's listen to Vera Vandershock play Natalia, arranged by Antonio Lar.
Thank you, Vera. That was lovely and calming. And now we will let the Energizer Bunny rest. I will ask you to join with me in reading the Chalice Extinguishing Words by Elizabeth Sally Jones. It's in the order of service. 1, 2, 3. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Before I turn the dais over, I'm going to take a second chance at telling you about something that makes me happy today. In bleak times, and maybe especially in bleak times, it's good to look for sparks of hope and touches of happiness. And so when I saw we were going to sing Amazing Grace today, I told Tom, I said, it made me so happy because I grew up Catholic, but I loved the Protestant hymn, Amazing Grace. And as I got older, I realized it's not really the words I love so much, but the feelings it evoked. I think we've all experienced gratification for grace that's entered our lives. And we all want to see, just to understand, and we all want to be found, which is to be noticed and to be loved. So hopefully we will be amazed, and Tom Devine will tell us more about the hymn and lead us in song.
Thank you, Dave. Yes, I'm sure you all know this hymn. It's one that is probably the most famous hymn ever. And you may also know that it was written by a man named John Newton. He worked, as a young man, he worked in the slave trade. He was even the captain of 3 slaving ships. After a near shipwreck, Shades of Jonah, he experienced a conversion, and he started studying religion. Eventually, he became an Anglican priest, a famous preacher, and a very strong advocate of abolishing the slave trade. In fact, he was one of the most influential voices that caused the slave trade to be abolished in England. So knowing this, even if you don't share his belief in original sin, maybe you can understand why he uses the word wretch when he writes of the amazing grace of a second chance. So we'll be singing the first 3 verses and then repeating the first verse as the final verse, the 4th verse. So please rise in body or spirit as you're able, and let's sing Amazing Grace. The words are in the hymnals and on your seats, and also in the order of service. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. Was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious is that grace appeared the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. Now a little softer.